Hey YouTube, here Twig here, bringing you guys my Qliphort Turbo deck profile for March 2016. This is mostly a fun deck because Qliphort's got really, hit on the last list with Scout going to 1 and Towers being banned. But the whole point of this deck is just, to, really abuse the pendulum effects, not the effects, but, monsters of the Qliphort deck, just to, get out some big fields and hit your opponent hard. So let's go ahead and jump into the deck profile. Like I said, this is mostly a fun deck, not too competitive, but for those people who still like Qliphorts and wish to play them. One Qliphort Scout, since this is the only one you can play. Obviously, if it was at 2 or 3, you would definitely run that. He's your whole search of the deck, so you really want to use him as much as you can. Pay 800 effect to search any Qliphort monster sets up your whole field, even searching out any of the Qliphort spell or traps. And also run 2 Monolith. This card's good for draw power. Basically, it's the other scale you'll want with Scout. And at the end of the turn, for every monster you tribute summoned, you can draw a card. So if you get out a monster that was 2 tributes this turn, you can draw 2 cards. It's a really good other pendulum scale. And like all the Qliphort monsters, you can only special summon Qliphort monsters when you have one of those scales out. And I also run 3 Qliphort Stealth. This card basically lets you compulse a card when it is tribute summoned, and your opponent cannot activate anything in response to this card. So if this is the first card of your chain, they can't activate anything in response to any of the Qliphort tribute effects as well, like Helix or Carrier. So getting this guy off can really, screw your opponent out of some pretty important plays. And I also run 2 Qliphort Disc. This card lets you special summon Qliphort monsters from your deck when it is tribute summoned. So you can basically get out 2 monsters. They're destroyed during the end phase, but the good thing is they'll go to your extra deck, so you don't have to worry about losing them. You can just pendulum summon them back next turn. And just like Stealth, Disc has, some pretty high attack, so it makes it pretty difficult for your opponent to get over it. And all the Qliphort monsters either have the effect where they make you gain 300 attack for your monsters in the pendulum scale or lose 300, depending on which one it is. So, it makes it even more difficult for your opponent to get over. And I also run 3 Qliphort Carrier. This card is basically one of the smaller Qliphorts. When it is tributed, you can compulse 1 monster on the field back to the owner's hand. So you can basically get rid of anything that, like of your opponents that has a destruction effect or something like that, send it back to their hand and not have to worry about it. And I also run 3 Qliphort Helix. This card has the spell or trap pop effect, so very easy for you to also destroy pendulum scales they control, or back row, pesky back row, so good card. And I also run 3 Qliphort Shell. This card can attack twice when it is tribute summoned, and it can also inflict piercing, so it's a great OTK material. Like I said, with this deck, you're maxing out as many resources as you can, just because you want to run a very wide pendulum variant, just because opening a lot of these guys can really help push for game. And also, I run 2 Qliphort Cephalopod, especially going against big monster graveyard decks. Basically, for how many monsters you have in your graveyard compared to your opponent, you gain the life and they take the life. So another good tribute effect. And since we don't have towers, I run 1 Skybase. Basically, almost like Towers, not as good as Towers. He has a Big Eye, take control of a monster effect, while Big Eye lets you send 1 card from their hand or field to the graveyard. Lower stats as well, but basically the same card every other way. And I also run 1 Trampolinx. Like to keep this guy at 1 just because he helped with the Scout bouncing consistency. If you were to play Scout in this pendulum summon, you can bounce Scout, reuse Scout, because you want to make use of Scout as much as you can in this deck, especially since you only have 1. That is it for monsters. We'll move on to spells. 1 Sacrifice, just like the usual, this card has been at 1 for a good while now. People are speculating that maybe Qliphorts will, come off the list in some way, so we'll have to see. But 1 of this for now, just protects your Qliphort monsters from being destroyed by battle. You can use 1 Qliphort monster you control for 2 tributes, gains 300, and when it's sent to the graveyard, you can add 1 Qli monster from your deck to your hand. So it's got a lot of effects. And also run 2 Summoner Arts. These cards are just to search out Monolith and Scout. Most likely you do want to bump it up to 3, but I only had 2 to use at the moment. Cannot remember where I put all of my summoner arts. 3 Wavering Eyes. We are in a pretty big pendulum format now, so definitely want to use 3 of this. Like I said, when Qliphorts first came out, this wasn't really as much of a main deck card because Qliphorts were really the only pendulum deck, so you'd side this in when you played another Qliphort player. But now that pendulums are everywhere, this is definitely a main deck card. And I also run 3 Chicken Game. This just helps for draw consistency. Can't go wrong with this card. Just got to learn to make use of it when your opponent and also has the option to use it. And I also run 3 Twin Twister. Back row is one of the big problems with this deck, especially if your opponent has a Wavering Eyes. They'll mess up your plays, because if you can't get your pendulum scales off, this is a big weakness of the deck. And for traps, I run 3 Climate Change. I might bump this down to 2 just because of, if I add in a 3rd Summoner Art. This card helps just because you want ways to get, more Qliphort monsters back into your hand. This one lets you add 3 face-up ones from your extra deck, so you'll be able to make use of this a lot, especially with Wavering Eyes when you destroy it. So if you set this card, you use Wavering Eyes to get a good amount into your extra deck that turn. Even with Tribute Summoning, you'll definitely add 3 cards back to your hand, and hopefully one of them will be Scout for you to reuse. And 2 Recreate. Would definitely swap in Lose 1 turn if I had them for this card. Basically almost the same effect, just for negating monsters that were normal summoned and letting tribute monsters keep their effect. But Lose a turn is the better option, so definitely run that over this card. And also 1 Skill Drain, awesome card in the deck, especially since the tribute effects are kept. The only thing that's negated are the summon effects. 1 Bottomless, and 1 Vanity's Emptiness to wrap up the deck. And as for extra deck, you don't really go into it too much, but the generic rank 4s, just because Qliphorts turn into level 4s when you summon them. But to make the Exceed monsters, you have to have no pendulum scales. So it comes up sometimes when you can't get the consistency with your pendulum scales. But yeah, that's it for the deck profile. Hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.